In this Warframe guide, we're gonna take a look at the best melees in the game that everyone should look out for in 2024. We're gonna go over how they work, where you get them from, and, most importantly, I also have builds for each and every one of them. So, after a huge shout out to all my generous channel members who help me keep the lights on, let's jump right into it. Starting out with one melee that not only is, but also kind of always has been one of my favorites, and it still remains all the way up there. What I'm talking about are the Cronin Prime. The Cronin Prime are a Tonfa-type weapon, they have been in the game for quite a while now, and their stats are still absolutely phenomenal. Let's take a look at them for a second. As we see right here, not only do the Cronin Prime have a massive status chance of 34%, but also the vast majority of the damage that they deal is slash, so you have a very heavy slasher. But in contrast to some other high-status melees out there, the Cronin Prime also have some really decent crit stats with 22% at a 2x multiplier. So yeah, perfect hybrid potential for heavily armored units because, as we all know, bleed status caused by slash status effects ignores enemy armor, so this is going to be your personal weapon of choice against heavily armored Grineer and other enemies like them. Now, of course, with the Cronin Prime being a prime weapon, that means that you can't always farm them in the game, so I also prepared a little alternative for you, which would be the Praetos. The Praetos are also a Tonfa-type weapon, and they do have very comparable statistics, similar crit chance, same crit multiplier, lower status chance, but because of the fact that it's an Incarnon weapon, you get some other nice benefits on the side. So if you've fallen in love with the Cronin Prime and you don't want to trade it with other players, then the Praetos is your best bet for now. This right here, by the way, would be my build. Nothing special, as you see, a slash-focused setup against Grineer, going into mainly combo and light hits, but also using Tennokai to occasionally weave in those hard-hitting heavy attacks. Melee number 2 on the list comes as a really big surprise, and that would be the Rakta Dark Dagger. Why in the world would I put that into the best melees in the entire game? I mean, looking at the stats alone, yeah, sure, it does have some nice status chance, but that's pretty much it. There are better daggers out there, and when it comes to pure damage, that is perfectly true. However, the Rakta Dark Dagger has a special ability that no other melee in the game has, and that is that if you do damage to enemies that are affected by radiation with it, then 5% of the damage that you're dealing is going to be converted into shields for your Warframe. So, in essence, damaging enemies with the Rakta Dark Dagger regenerates your shields, which is super duper nice, especially on shield tanking setups on frames like, for example, Hildren, Harrow, and others. Now, sure, the enemy needs to be affected by radiation first, otherwise that doesn't count, but when we look back into the stats, we see the Rakta Dark Dagger already has radiation, so it can inflict that itself too. And what's even cooler is, and I've also talked about this in other videos, the shield regeneration does not only work on the enemies that you're hitting directly with the dagger, also, if you cause any type of damage over time effects, then each damage over time tick that somehow originated from the Rakta Dark Dagger, that is also going to contribute to the shield regeneration. My personal tip, so to speak, my secret sauce, would be going for a melee influence build like I also did right here, because the arcane melee influence makes it that after triggering an electricity status effect, you can spread the elements that are modded onto your weapon to nearby enemies. That's why in this build I modded gas and electricity on the Rakta Dark Dagger, so that I can use the electricity to trigger melee influence, which is then gonna spread the radiation and the gas at the same time. In other words, as long as you don't go very high in the enemy level, it's gonna be pretty much impossible that your shields are ever gonna be shot down with that amount of regeneration. And to get it from yourself, you can either buy it from other players because it is tradable, or you can get it for 125 standing from the Red Veil Syndicate, so depending on who you're affiliated with, this might either be good or terrible news for you. And just by the way, good news for me would be if you could maybe drop a like for the video because it helps big time with the YouTube algorithm, so big kisses for your support. The next melee on today's list is a relatively new one in the form of the Harmony, and this one really took me by surprise to the point where I'm actually considering making a dedicated video just on this weapon alone because it is such an insane banger. Let's talk about it. Now, the Harmony is a Scythe-type weapon, just like the Hate and the Reaper Prime. and scythe weapons have always had a thing for having really hard-hitting heavy attacks because they would force proc slash and also deal some decent damage. However, the Harmony brings that to a whole new level because it, just like the Rakta Dark Dagger, has a unique ability, that being that when you hit an enemy with a heavy attack, then all status effects that they have on themselves that deal damage over time, so slash, toxin, electricity, all that stuff, for all those status effects, the entirety of the remaining damage that has yet to be dealt over time will be combined into one big number and dealt to them instantly. However, that is not all. A second thing that is unique for the Harmony is that if you take out an enemy with a heavy attack, then the status duration for you and allies will be temporarily increased by 30%. In other words, when the damage over time effects on the enemies last longer, that means they deal in total more damage, meaning if you pop them with the Harmony, the damage is going to be even crazier. So when using the Harmony, all we really gotta do is hit the enemies up with a couple light attacks to inflict some slashes, and then follow up with a heavy attack to pop all those slashes and deal massive damage. When we look at the build right here, you also see it's sort of a hybrid between light and heavy attack. However, the one thing that needs further explanation here would be Melee Afflictions. Melee Afflictions is a relatively new arcane that makes it so that whenever enemies are lifted up or knocked down by a melee attack, the status effects that they have on them at that point get additional stacks and quite a lot of them. Now, why is that important? Because, what a coincidence, scythe-type weapons have the stance mod Reaping Spiral, which, guess what, lifts enemies up on the first hit of the normal combo and knocks them down again on the third, thereby triggering Melee Afflictions twice, and then you follow up with a heavy attack which easily deals tens or maybe even hundreds of millions of damage. It is absolutely insane. Let's quickly also talk about where you get it from. The Harmony was released with the Jade update, so you get it from the new Ascension game mode on Brutus Uranus that was introduced with that update. Or in case you get unlucky with the drops, you can go to the Drifters camp to Ordis and purchase it for Vestigial Motes, which is a resource that you get from this game mode. Alright friends, I'm realizing I'm talking quite a lot and we have so many more melees on the list, so let's keep the next one a bit shorter. And that would be, probably to nobody's surprise, the Zorus. So, what's so special about the Zorus? The Zorus is a glaive type weapon, which means you can throw it out and make it explode midair to deal massive AoE damage, and the special thing about this one is that it force procs impact and electricity on the AoE explosion. Why is that such a big deal? Because of Melee Influence, the melee arcane that we've already used on the Rakta Dark Dagger that allows us to spread out the elements that we have on our weapon. So yeah, obviously if the Zorus force procs electricity all the time, then you will trigger Melee Influence all the time, spread all the carnage even more, and deal tons and tons of AoE damage to pretty much everybody on screen. In my opinion, the Zorus is absolutely phenomenal against bigger groups of enemies. This right here is the build. You will see it does not have melee influence because this build right here is what I use in the gameplay in the background, which came from my recent Wisp video, and there is a special case where I'm not going for melee influence, but usually you would go for a melee influence build on the Zorus. So, where do you get it from? Absolutely no problem actually, because you get one complete Zorus with the blueprint and all components from just playing the Deadlock Protocol quest, which I think is pretty early in the game. It should be a piece of cake to get it. In case you sold it though, you have to go to Cephalon Samaris unfortunately and grind out the standing with him to get a new copy. So much about the Zorus. However, I want to go on a bit more about thrown melees, aka glaive type weapons, with the next point on our list, and this one is actually two glaive type weapons at the same time, those being the Glaive Prime and the Serata. Let me explain what I mean here. While the Zorus with melee influence is pretty much universally awesome for spreading big carnage, the Glaive Prime and the Serata fill a little bit of a different role. See, just like the Zorus, which force procs electricity on an explosion, the Glaive Prime force procs slash with its explosion, and the Serata toxin. What's so special about that fact? Well, it's pretty simple actually. Slash, as we already pointed out, ignores enemy armor when it deals its damage over time, so it is perfectly against heavily armored targets like for example Grineer. And then Toxin, on the other hand, bypasses shields by default, meaning it is extremely great against Corpus. This right here would be my personal example build for the Glaive Prime, and if you want to build the Serata, of course, you would build it into Toxin with the equivalent Corpus faction damage mod. Let's quickly talk also about acquisition, and I have some good news here for you because the Glaive Prime is actually currently available in the game, so you can go out there and farm your relics, as well as for the Serata, you can just get the blueprint from the biolab in your dojo and then craft it from a couple of resources. Whew, we talked a lot about melees with special traits and abilities, right? So how about we get a little bit down to earth now with another melee that isn't special in any way, it is just really strong and deals a lot of damage. That being the KnightmareFrame, and in case you can't farm it at the moment, a good alternative would also be the Zepfan Zaw that you can construct in Cetus. Now, when we take a look at the stats for the KnightmareFrame, it's pretty obvious. High crit chance, high crit multiplier, high status chance, most of the damage being slash. So pretty much the best stats you could wish for in any melee weapon out there, and as you also see in the background, we are hacking enemies into pieces in no time. This right here is the build, pretty much the same approach as also for the Cronin Prime, which all in all works very similar, but for the KnightmareFrame, and actually for all Nikana type weapons in the game, there is a little extra treat that you don't get with other melee types. What I'm talking about here is a special amalgam mod called Amalgam Daikyu Target Acquired. This mod is exclusively for the Daikyu bow, and if you equip the Daikyu bow and put this mod onto it, then Nikana type weapons gain 3% lifesteal. In other words, just by having that thing equipped, you will have constant healing with every hit and every slash DOT that you're dealing with your KnightmareFrame, meaning if you play a health tanking build, it's going to be pretty much impossible for you to ever die. Up next, we have, admittedly, a bit of an alien, and I could totally understand if you were to argue this one doesn't really belong into the list of the best melees in the game, but it's still pretty good, and that would be the Rumblejack. See, the Rumblejack is a corpus-based dagger with an insanely high status chance of 40%. That is crazy. What's also crazy is the fact that it has innate electricity damage, and this is exactly what makes it so special because that means it's a perfect match for melee influence that spreads your status effects when you inflict electricity status effects with your melee. Let me explain. Just like with the Daikyu, there is also another special amalgam mod, and that will be Amalgam Argonac Metal Auger. This is a mod exclusive to the Argonac, and the special thing about it is that it makes dagger-type weapons reduce enemy armor, and that is where the loop sort of closes itself because the Rumblejack is considered a dagger. So if you have the Argonac equipped with that Amalgam mod, you can run the Rumblejack to spread your status effects throughout the entire room, and if you were to, for example, put gas on it, just like we did with the Rakta Dark Dagger, then also the damage takes from those gas clouds would reduce enemy armor, therefore armor stripping the entire room, and because of the fact that the Rumblejack has high status chance and electricity already on it, that means it's sort of the perfect dagger to do that. This right here is the build that I used in the background. Admittedly, this is actually not meant to armor strip, but just to viral spread. However, if you, unlike me, would go for gas and not for viral, then you would have this armor stripping unlocked as soon as you have the Amalgam Argonac Metal Auger in your setup. Wanna have the Rumblejack for yourself now? No problem. It is actually given to you for free with a weapon slot and an Orokin Catalyst already pre-installed after finishing the new war quest, and just in case you have accidentally sold it, then you can also get it from Cephalon Simaris just like the Zorus. Okay, now it gets important because you have a limited time to get this weapon since it is on a rotation, that being one of the best melees in the entire game, the Dual Ichor Incarnon. Because it's an Incarnon weapon, you will get it from the Duviri Circquit, and what a lucky coincidence, this very week the Dual Ichor Incarnon happens to be in the rotation, so if what I'm about to tell you convinces you that you want to have it for yourself, make sure to get it before next Monday, because otherwise you might have to wait for like 6 more weeks. At base, the Dual Ichor are infested double swords with some decent stats. I mean, a 25% crit chance is certainly nice, and a 3x crit multiplier means you're gonna deal quite some heavy hits with it. The status chance is not that convincing, but as we're gonna see in a minute right here, this is actually not a problem. Since the Dual Ichor Incarnon is, guess what, an Incarnon weapon, that means we're gonna have different evolutions that are gonna make this thing much stronger, so how about we take a look at the evolutions right now. First things first, when you activate the Incarnon mode, the special trait that the Dual Ichors get is that when you're gonna attack enemies, you create a toxin cloud in position that works relatively similar to gas clouds from gas status effects. It deals toxin damage over time and also inflicts the elemental procs that you have modded onto your dual Ichor itself. For Evolution 2, it pretty much comes down to your personal preference. If you're fighting against softer targets that die faster, go for the one that gives you additional combo when you hit enemies inflicted by toxin. And if you go against harder enemies that take more hits, you can go for the second perk where you get more attack speed. In Evolution 3, I personally went for range because that's always kinda nice, right? And Evolution 4, in my opinion, is pretty darn obvious because it allows you to get plus 34% freaking status chance. That is what I was referring to earlier when I said the low 15% status chance is not that big of a deal because you get all the status chance from the last evolution. It's crazy. If you ask me, crystal clear, go for the status chance here. This right here would be the build that I'm using in the background. Probably not the best thing you can put together with them, but I didn't want to invest all too many formas into it, using of course electricity, melee influence to spread viral, and that is already pretty much enough to clear the screen at any given moment. But okay, the next one is going to be a quick one, promise, and that will be the Furax, the MK1 Furax, or the Furax Wraith. The reason why all of these three variants are okay is actually pretty simple, and that is you don't use these ones to deal any sort of damage to enemies. These are basically just used as a stat stick because there is another Amalgam mod called Amalgam Furax Body Count, and the special effect that it provides is that it increases fire rate for secondary weapons. So just by having any type of Furax equipped with this mod on it, you get more fire rate on your secondary weapons, and that is great, especially for Warframes like Mesa, where, her exalted pistols count as secondary weapon, and they will shoot faster with this mod equipped. Same thing goes for Titania, or for any secondary setup that you might be running. So yeah, the Furax are really not great, but in reality, this is pretty much just a utility weapon that you use for pistol-based setups, and it is really good at that. Get it if you have the chance to. Up next, we have a weapon that everybody will love who likes heavy hitters, and that will be the Gram Prime. Now, just like the Nikana Prime or the Cronin Prime, the Gram Prime doesn't have any special fancy traits or abilities, it's just a melee that deals a lot of damage. And because it is a heavy blade, it's a bit slower but therefore deals a lot more damage. Looking into the stats, we can clearly see what's going on here. 32 fat% crit chance with a 2.6x multiplier, that's ridiculous, but also we get 32% status chance at the same time with a very high slash weighting. So, as you also see in the background right here, we're not only going to deal red crits, but also we're going to deal crazy bleeds of over 1 million in this example right here. And I don't really think I have to say anything more, right? If you ever have the chance, get yourself a Gram Prime if you like big, heavy blades. Okay, now, the next weapon on our list is unfortunately a little bit embarrassing for me because only after writing this I realized that I don't even have it. And since it's an Incarnon, I don't even have the chance to get it before the release of this video. Let me explain what's going on here and why it's actually not too bad that we're not going to have gameplay footage of it in the background. Just like the Furax Wraith, also the Ceramic Dagger Incarnon is not really primarily used to actually deal damage itself, but more as a utility weapon to buff up other parts of your build. Before we look at the Ceramic Dagger itself, we need to take a look at a pistol arcane called Secondary Outburst. What this one does is, when you swap to your pistol, you're going to consume all the combo multiplier that you have on your melee to grant your pistol extremely high crit chance for a certain period of time. The problem here though, of course, would be that you consume your melee combo multiplier, therefore you would have to build it up again and again and again. And especially for setups that use this arcane, the Ceramic Dagger Incarnon is an absolute godsend. Here is why. Being an Incarnon weapon, it naturally also comes with its own evolutions, and the special ones here will be Evolution 2, because what that does is, it increases your initial combo for melees to up to 100, or in other words, a constant 6x combo multiplier for the rest of the mission. And that's not even where it ends, because we have another perk in Evolution 3, which gives you another plus 20 initial combo. So yeah, in other words, you would use the Ceramic Dagger Incarnon pretty much just to give yourself initial combo so that you don't have to rebuild all of that every time you use one of those arcanes or whatever the build is doing, but to have that combo multiplier up constantly. Now, to be fair, we do have Melee Crescendo right now, which is a melee arcane that does pretty much the same, and you can even get to up to a constant 12x multiplier with this one. But of course, it's a rare platinum arcane, it's expensive, it takes the time to farm it, and you need to get a ton of finisher kills to stack it up. So if you ask me, the Ceramic Dagger Incarnon is still a very viable choice to achieve the same goal. Up next, we again have a very simple one, and that would be the Pangolin Prime. It's a prime weapon, it has great stats as you also see right here, it's a standard sword, and you use it to deal a lot of damage to your enemies. As you also see in the background, that is all there is really to it. This right here is the build, and if you don't have the Pangolin Prime, or you don't have access to it at the moment, a very viable alternative, in my opinion, would be the Broken War, which you can run pretty much with the same build. It has similar stats and also deals tons of damage. Great thing about this is that you get it automatically just by playing through the story. Next. Venka Prime. Everything I said about the Pangolin Prime also counts for the Venka Prime, just that this is not a sword, but actually claw-type weapons. And yeah, the Venka Prime has great stats, it attacks really quickly, and it has another little special that no other melee weapon in the game has, and that is that with the Venka Prime, your combo multiplier is not maxed out at 12x, but actually at 13x. So that's definitely a nice treat on the side, and you can do some funky things with it. This here is my build that I'm using in the background. It's nothing special, we've seen this like 5 times in the video already on other weapons, and all in all it's just a great weapon. If you have the chance to ever get your hands on them, do so, you're not gonna regret it. For the next one, I'm gonna make it very quick. It's the Guandao Prime, it's a staff type weapon. I love staff weapons, you love staff weapons, everybody loves staff weapons. The stats are great crit chance, great crit multiplier, status chance is decent. This right here would be my personal build. And while it is true that there is the Orthos Prime, which is also kind of sort of similar in performance to the Guandao Prime is simply much prettier and therefore significantly better, of course. Mic drop, on to the next. And last, but definitely not least in this admittedly very long video, we have another claw-type weapon that is this time a bit more special again, and that would be the Keratinos. The Keratinos, just like the Venka Prime, are claw-type weapons, but they have a unique trait, and that is, if you heavy attack with a 12x combo multiplier, you get plus 2.8 meters in range for 3 minutes. That is really cool because it means you free up one mod slot in the build that you usually would use for something like Primed Reach to increase your range. With this trait though, you don't need that. That means you have more build flexibility. In terms of the stats, the crit performance is really not that great with just 13%. However, with 29% status chance and innate viral damage already on the weapon, that makes it extremely great. Because if you have viral on the weapon already, you have the very rare opportunity to have viral and, for example, toxin or cold on the weapon at the same time. If you ask me, the Keratinos are definitely underrated, especially if you're the type of player that values convenience over everything else, if you're the type of person that puts viral and slash on the same weapon because you can't be bothered to actually use a primer to prime the viral. If that's you, then the Keratinos are like the perfect melee for you. This right here is my build that I'm using in the background, and if you want to have the Keratinos for yourself, then that's not going to be any problem, because you can get the main blueprint and the components from Father in the Necrolisk, and then you just build it. By the way, I also already have lists out for the best rifles and shotguns in Warframe, so if that tickles your fancy, then make sure to check them out right here. Another big shout out to Niels V, Demon Lord Cell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nost Linux Gaming, Lycan Shepherd, Turtlepeer, Pepperwolf, Ondakani02, Misfire DX, Streamjet21, SunUpKing 5000, Gribbler Beaksy, Mihawk HE, Yagis, Hoke Hunter, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.